What's up guys, it's Pliskin here and welcome to the channel's first Q&A. Now, I honestly did not expect a single person to, post any questions for this, but we actually got a couple, so let's sit back and go through them. So our first question, the first couple questions actually are from Jamie's25, Hi Miss25, Jamie S 2025, whatever. He asked, do you anticipate making content, maybe a playthrough of the MGS Master Collection Volume 1 when it comes out? Well, here's the thing. I'm never going to stop making Metal Gear content because when I'm making these videos, it's not necessarily me making content, it's me having something that I want to talk about. And it just so happens that 90% of the time, I want to talk about Metal Gear. Now, I'm going to be getting the Master Collection. I might not get everything in it, but I definitely want to have some Metal Gear games on my Switch. I love my Switch. I love the variety of games I'm getting on them. I love how it caters to split screen and, couch co-op party games. And I've always said the only things missing from the Switch to make it the best console I've ever owned is the presence of Metal Gear or Halo. So now that Metal Gear is coming to it, you can bet your ass I'm gonna play it here. And if I'm gonna play it here, you can bet your ass I'm gonna record stuff. And if I'm gonna record stuff, you're gonna hear about me talking about it. Metal Gear Solid 3 and Metal Gear Solid 2, I'm definitely gonna talk about how the Switch handles the pressure controls when it comes to the aiming. The pressure controls and generally the control scheme and menu handling of Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 are simultaneously some of the best and worst parts of those games. I made a video talking about how the games handle these cameras, how they handle shooting, how that could be, worked on in the future, the flaws and the strong points. I'll link it down below. But when the Metal Gear Master Collection comes out, I'm definitely going to play it because I want to play Metal Gear on my Switch, and I'm definitely going to record it since, if I wanted to record stuff for Metal Gear Solid 3, 2, or 4, I would always have to record it off of my PlayStation 3, which meant the quality could only be 720p, which meant that, when I do my editing process and upload this stuff onto YouTube, it never really looks as good as it could, hence why I sometimes do a smaller box if the video quality is really bad, so it doesn't look really shitty if you're watching it on a larger screen. I know a lot of you guys watch these videos on your phone, so it's not much of a problem, but I watch these videos on a TV, so yeah. Now the second question is also, I know there's no way to know, but do you think that it ever be possible for a finished version of Phantom Pain to be released or something along those lines? And here, I'm gonna drop a little bit of a truth bomb on you. The best version of Phantom Pain has already released. It's called Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. It's like the Phantom Pain, except it doesn't have the shitty AI not really mapped well to the open world. A decent balanced sandbox, a tight designed base that's a joy to go over and over and over again in multiple different ways and unlock different cassette tapes and songs and outfits and all this kind of stuff. I've sung Ground Zero's praises so many times and I'm doing it here again. And on the note of Metal Gear Solid 5 and the true version of the game, you remember how I was doing that series talking about the cut content of Metal Gear Solid 5? Well, I was doing some digging for episode 2, and it turns out that Metal Gear Solid 5 was supposed to be a live service game. Now, let me explain. You know how every mission starts off with an episodic opening, like it's a TV show, and there's different chapters in the game, like you have Chapter 1, Revenge, Chapter 2, Race, and the fabled Chapter 3, Peace. What Kojima wanted to do is periodically release different chapters of the game as DLC. So if the Phantom Pain hadn't gotten fucked over by Kojima, and if it had released as intended, it would have just been like a microtransaction riddled mess. You can already see this with how grindy it can be to unlock certain items in the game, but the fact that they would have done this with the story as well, where you would have had to pay for more, is really shitty and kind of makes me happy that Metal Gear got shot in the leg before 5 could really take off. Because if it did take off, it would have just played into the trends of what we're dealing with modern games now. I mean, in that sense, I guess Kojima really is a visionary, seeing where the industry is going, for better or worse. But yeah, the best version of Metal Gear Solid 5 already came out. Get yourself out of the mentality that, oh my god, this game would have been the best game ever if he just had the time to do it. No, it would have been a live service, disconnected, weird, episodic mess. I mean, Kojima even went on record, I think, saying that he was like inspired by Telltale games and the way they did those. So it would have been something like that, and I don't think that's what any of us would have wanted. So the last question is, have you played Ghost Recon Wildlands? If so, what are your thoughts on it? Alright, I used to have a lot of footage of Ghost Recon Breakpoint. I don't know where it is. I had so much of this shit like archived. But yeah, I played Breakpoint for like 3 days straight, really liked it until I realized that the open world was way too big and there were way too many spots in between, and it was like really aimless, and there was a poorly balanced sandbox. It was like a lot of good ideas implemented really shit. And then I tried Wildlands, and I mean, like, it's okay. I mean, I like that you can play in an open world doing stealth with your friends, that's pretty cool. But if I want like that kind of like more so realistic open world stealth, and I say realistic with very heavy quotations here, okay? I'd probably just boot up Far Cry 4, because I could also, you know, play online with that. There's a map editor, and it just feels better to play. Like, here's the thing, I might trash Metal Gear Solid 5's open world and, you know, the lack of content and how it's just a butchered game, but I keep coming back to it because the control scheme is so fluid and the stealth, when it works, is really organic, and I just didn't feel that with the Ghost Recon series. The next question here from Tristan is, would you recommend Halo C as a starting point for someone to get into the Halo series? I never played Halo. And do you think it still holds up nowadays? Now, in regards to the first question here, because this is really a two-part question, in regards to whether or not you should start with this, I have to ask what you're getting into Halo for. For example, if you're just trying to get into the multiplayer, I would recommend playing Halo 2, specifically on Auto Slayer, because the Halo multiplayer, just overall in the series, has a huge issue with precision weapon meta, which is basically people using DMRs, needle rifles, pistols, just headshot-based weapons to negate what I like to call the core of Halo. The core of Halo is shields and health. Now, if you really want to understand what that core is, I totally recommend starting with Halo Combat Evolved, because its sandbox of weapons and enemies mesh together perfectly in a way that communicate how this system works. There are certain weapons designed for being really powerful against enemies that only have health and no shields. However, if you're going up against an enemy with shields, there are different classes of weapons specifically tailored to taking down their shields before you can switch to a different gun that does more health damage and kill them that way. So, for example, the plasma pistol is really good for charging up and taking out enemies that are based around shield health. This also applies to some of the robot type enemies you'll find later on in the game. But then the pistol is much more better oriented for, you know, just getting some headshots on the different enemies you come across. However, it doesn't penetrate through shields. So this whole dichotomy between shields and health, and the different enemies that represent that, and the ways that you have to constantly switch between your weapons in order to come out on top and really understand not just your weapon sandbox, but how it matches up with the enemies, to come out on top, like that is fucking gold. And I've never played a game in my life that has a better balanced sandbox than Halo 1. I always like to call it single purpose because every enemy, every weapon, every vehicle, everything you come across has a specific purpose and is meant to be used in a certain way. And as you learn what those ways are, you get better at the game. The second question is, do I feel it holds up? Absolutely. As long as you don't play the anniversary version of Halo 1, which was the graphical remaster, don't touch that. Visually, it's a fucking mess. It's okay. I don't know how old you are, Tristan, but there might be a little bit of a bias in your mind depending on when you were born to prefer games that have more photorealistic graphics. I'm here to tell you that this is not the case. There are specific cases with games where having a better oriented and organized art style can sometimes trump realistic graphics. So with Halo 1, you'll notice that in all the footage that I'm showing here, the environments tend to be very kind of bland in regards to their coloring. The enemies tend to have more vibrant colors on them. The environments tend to have more generic rounded or squared off shapes, whereas the enemies have very interesting and distinct silhouettes. Animation cycles. You will know exactly what is coming at you from far away. So if I see a jackal, its shield, and the glowing green from its plasma pistol, I know exactly how it's going to fight me, and I know exactly how I need to approach it. And there will never come a point where it's hard to see the enemies because there's just so much detail in the environment. So in regards to its art style, I feel it really holds up. In regards to its mechanics, I think it really holds up as well. Like, again, different weapons, different enemies match up perfectly. It's a modernized, well, basically Halo Combat Evolved was responsible for the modernization of first-person shooter controls on a console. So yeah, it still feels good because it set the benchmark for how Call of Duty and every other game would play after Halo. The narrative is a little bare bones, but I mean, that's not really the appeal of Halo 1. The appeal of Halo 1 is all the things I talked about, but then also that feeling of being on this mystical alien, like, world and uncovering its mystery and feeling like you're actually taking place in battles. Like Metal Gear Solid 4, for example, tries so hard to make you feel like you're on a battlefield, and it uses, intense sound design and set pieces and all these things, whereas Halo 1 will really just put you on a massive battlefield between different factions going to war with each other, and you just have to kind of get in there and, use your knowledge of the gameplay and telegraphs to get out on top. On the note of telegraphs, this game does really good with that as well. Every enemy that is shooting at you, you will see the rounds coming towards you, whether it's plasma or kinetic weapons coming out of the assault rifle. There's one type of enemy in the game that uses a weapon in a pretty cheap way, but it's very few and far between. There's only one level where it's too much of an issue, and it's nowhere near as bad as other people will, talk about. If you want to see what I'm talking about with, the plasma and kinetic and shields and health in multiplayer, CE has a pretty good multiplayer, but it's less about that kind of stuff since it takes a long time to switch between your weapons, so you're better off just getting power weapons. But in Halo 2's multiplayer, again, with the dual wielding mechanic, you really see these shields and health kind of like gameplay styles really implemented well, where the only weapons that you have to use two hands on and can't dual wield feel more like power weapons, and I feel like this is more of how it should be. Your standardized weapons need to, really balance on that shield and health and going back and forth between them, whereas if you have a weapon that can just kill an enemy right off the bat, it should be considered a power weapon. Halo 2, specifically on Autoslayer, does this. The Halo CE campaign also does this, so that core of Halo I was talking about before, you'll see it there. Halo 3 is pretty good if you want to go around like collecting stuff or play through a campaign. It doesn't really do the shields and health, it's more just precision weapons and explosive weapons. But yeah, I had a lot of fun playing Halo 3 and unlocking the Hayabusa armor back on the 360. and getting, like, you know, the skulls on the different missions. So for unlockables and secrets, Halo 3 is pretty cool. But yeah, Halo 1 is not only where I feel like you should start to really appreciate what Halo is about mechanically, but it's also the one I always come back to the most. I consider it to be the greatest game ever made. Now, right underneath Tristan's comment, we have a comment from Delta1404. He says, I'm in the same position, picked up the Master Chief Collection and started with Combat Evolved, and I find it repetitive after a while. Question mark? Gunplay is good, I guess, but the samey alien hallways kind of bore me. To be fair, if it's my mood...
Take out a gun and blow a fucking hole in your head right here, right now. You want that?
Alright, look, Delta. I understand what you're talking about with these samey environments in Halo 1. The other games in the series do a much better job at providing much more visual variety in the environments. I like to call Halo 2 specifically Halo tourism, because whether you're on a multiplayer map or if you're on like a campaign map, that same sense of wonder I talked about in being in a strange and alien place, you get in Halo 2 tenfold. The issue is you get a lot of enemies that cheap kill you, the sandbox is horribly balanced if you're not doing multiplayer on Autoslayer, but in regards to just having visual variety, maybe go with Halo 2. Or, you know, even Halo 3, for the second half of its campaign gets a little bit more variety in there. Halo Reach is also really good for variety. It has probably one of the best paced campaigns. Halo Reach is a very close second to Halo 1. The only thing that holds Reach back, is its really shitty sandbox. But yeah, in regards to Halo 1 and the samey hallways, you gotta keep in mind that this is a game that is focused on the mechanics first and foremost. It's focused on that single purpose system of pairing up a weapon against an enemy and switching your loadout against, you know, every new encounter you come across. So these rooms serve more as just different ways that you can mess around with the sandbox and really get to know it. There are certain missions, specifically Assault on the Control Room and 2 Betrayals, where you get a lot of weird boxy rooms. I feel like if they cut them out, it wouldn't have detracted too much from the game, so I hear you on that, but I definitely don't think that's something that holds Halo CE down. There's still a decent amount of visual variety and still a lot more missions that do a much more open approach to the gameplay. Like, if you get annoyed by the missions that have very repetitive rooms, go ahead and take a break from the game, maybe play some Halo 2, or go play some Halo Reach. But, you know, definitely come back to Halo Combat Evolved. It's definitely a game you should play through in its entirety at least once, and then go back and just play the missions that you enjoyed playing through. And yeah, that pretty much brings us to the end. The only other comments on this post are just Dead Spacho being incredibly based in the comments. There is one more thing I do want to tell you guys though. If you're part of the minority on this channel that really likes when I talk about Halo 1, I really recommend this channel called Milkman. Now, Milkman goes over Halo 1 and a whole bunch of other stuff too. I've only really watched his Halo 1 stuff, but he goes about the game. He has the same kind of passion I do about it, but he tackles it more so from like a map perspective, because that's what he's really into, like map design. So it's a fresh take on Halo 1 that you're not really going to see on my channel, but that like same kind of passion. Also, this guy has a criminally low subscriber count. So if you want a recommendation for good content on YouTube, because that's becoming more and more rare by the day, I really recommend you check out Milkman. But yeah, thank you guys for participating in the Q&A. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I definitely enjoyed an excuse to talk about Halo 1 and Metal Gear. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. This has been Pliskin, over and out.
This is Solid Snake. Hey, subscribe to Pliskin Boy. God damn it.
You heard him.